Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today for our webinar, How to Buy a New ERP Solution. My name is Katie and I'll be the facilitator today. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question area in the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen and we'll answer questions at the end. The session will be recorded and posted on our blog as well as shared with you later next week. I would like to introduce our presenter today, Darren Atkins, Encore Account Executive. Darren, pass it over to you.
Hi, and thanks, Katie. Um, we're going to talk about a lot of things today, and they're all interconnected in ERP selection. And our agenda here briefly, we did our introduction, so we can cross that bullet point off. We're going to talk about evaluating business needs, requirements, gap fit, data migrations, budgetary alignment, partner selection, implementation approach, a little bit about how Encore aligns with that. But all these elements and ingredients go into what you might typically find when you're trying to evaluate an ERP solution and a partner to implement it. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get started here. Just real fast, a little bit about Encore. Been in business over 33 years, implementing Dynamics ERP solutions. We're very aligned with Microsoft. I'll talk about that a little bit later. We have over 2,000 software implementations, 800 clients, close to 120 employees. We have all the Microsoft certifications, and we cover the gamut of different solutions and industries, from service to manufacturing, distribution, and everything in between that you might need to do as a business. And of course, not-for-profits, it could be 2 or 3 user not-for-profits all the way up to 500 membership organizations, or 1,000 people in a public company, etc. So we really do cover the gamut and have a wide variety of customers throughout the years. Okay.
So start off, Darren, could you talk about some of the key factors for businesses to consider when buying a new ERP solution?
Yeah, and that's really great because there's several things. So what's going to happen, and typically in my typical day is somehow I connect with a potential or prospective customer or client. You're coming with questions and needs, and you're looking for software or a partner. I feel like some people have been around this and done a lot, and they've been through it many times, and sometimes it's their first time. So obviously, if you've done this a lot before, maybe this is all just review for you. But if not, or maybe you haven't been in that position where you've had to make a software selection, and it's often a big ticket decision. It's not just a light, like, hey, we're getting a new laptop, or printer or something like that in your organization, but it's actually, hey, we're considering our automation, for our business to help make it more productive, efficient, grow, all these good things, operate. So it's very, a critical decision, and it, warrants careful consideration, right? So in your buying process, you're going to have several things. Obviously, you're coming in with business needs. It's good to understand what those are, what your own needs are, all the way from the top down, from, I'm going to digress a second, but you've heard of the three key pillars, which involve people, processes, and technology. So, and to that, Encore adds strategy. So we like to be a strategic partner to help you navigate this decision process. And you may be talking not just with one partner, you may end up talking with several to compare or perform due diligence to make your decision. So along with that, there's going to be discovery. You're going to, a lot of the questions you're going to be asked will be around what are your business requirements, which add up to the scope of the project. So, oh, we're going to include accounting but not payroll, or we want accounting and we want to manage our projects better. So whatever those elements are, and then you drill down from there, what are all the critical pieces in there? Now, you're trying to establish alignment. So once you have what your business requires, and we'll talk about the different levels of requirements, but you'll want to then be measuring, does the software meet those requirements or what we need? So those needs can come at three different levels in general. User needs, so that's the end user, the person who's actually on there inputting, transacting in the system or looking up information, etc. They're going to have one specific, type of need, which will be how they perform their work in the system. Management might be the next layer up because they're managing individuals and they might have more needs about visibility and reporting and um, critical functions and business process. And then at the higher level, you're going to have strategic business needs. So what's the vision? Usually that's the CEO or president or something who's the visionary, and what direction are we headed, and how will this software support that direction? Um, so the buying process, as I mentioned, will include these elements. There's going to be some discovery. It might be one session, it might be several sessions to get a good understanding and agreement between you and the selling partner, or it might be you may be speaking directly with the software publisher. In this case, Microsoft. In our case, Microsoft does not sell directly, so that's good to understand. They sell through a partner network. So as a business partner, we represent Microsoft and are licensed to perform sales and implementation and support the software. So it's important to understand the whole buying process. Who owns the product? A lot of the success of your implementation, and implementations can fail, will depend on having somebody owning it. If there's nobody owning it from your team, I can guarantee that's going to reduce the success if you just put it all on the partner. On the partner side, hey, some of that success is going to depend on their implementation methodology or process, and and the project manager, and of course the people implementing or performing the work with you. And we can talk about a little bit more about that later. Also, budget. Everybody likes to talk about money or not, but that's plays a large role in this. So you have to be able to describe, what are the, what business impact will this have? Why are we doing this project? Why are we doing it now? Why is this important? Ask why 5 times. You might have heard that, but it's important to really understand that, and then, what will the business impact be if we are able to do, these new things that our older or legacy system could not? Or how will we measure that success? So what's the business impact? What will be our measurement for success, or key performance indicators, or KPIs? ROI, return on investment, another big word there, but it's just, if you're not the end decision point, or maybe you have to present um, criteria for a decision to either maybe a CFO or a board or something like that, then you have to build a business case, which is just really a fancy way of saying, what's the cost justification? If we spend this money, what am I getting in return for it? How long will it take to realize that return? So there are a lot of different things that I'm sure are buzzing through your mind when you're approaching, wow, I've got to make a software selection. A lot of different elements here. So hopefully, part of it is you want to find a partner who can help you navigate these things, come with questions, answer all these questions. You come with information, your business, what your business needs are and requirements are, and things that you want to be able to do, or things you want to achieve. These are all different different levels of needs, but that's really important to prep and be thinking about when you enter into a conversation, because these are the types of questions that we're going to ask you. What's your timing? What's your timeline? Oh, we want to be live for January 1. Well, it's November 14th. Well, how long do the implementations take? Well, they could be 4 to 6 months or 6 to 8 months. So it's important to understand timing is part of it. It's important to understand, hey, is this a time and material project? Is it fixed fee? What's the process for, you know, putting all this down and agreeing upon it? And do we have to put down a deposit? And how much is it going to cost? So all these things are really important. We're talking about you're going to have two parties coming together to create this project. As your takes a village to raise a child. So, you really, um, you know, it's going to take a lot of communication and participation, and so forth. I want to mention one more thing. I mentioned scope. There's two other key points, and to what you might see referred to as the iron triangle in project management, if you're familiar with that. But you have scope, budget, and timeline. Those are the three critical things that get managed, and then you want to manage or mitigate any risk to those. So once you agree upon, hey, we've got timeline, we realized that, yeah, we can't really go live in January, but maybe, June makes more sense based on the timing and and our scope and what we want to get done. And we've determined how much it's going to cost. We've got a budget. So now we're going to manage to those 3 points and identify or flag as the process going any risk to those. So it's all about risk and risk mitigation. So you want to understand what are all the ins and outs of this implementation. Let's see if I want to. Oh, I want to cover a couple other little points here. I mentioned implementation methodologies. That's important. Is this waterfall, meaning each step in certain sequence, or is it, you might have heard the term agile project management, or is it something in between like a WAGIL, which you might find a lot of partners in this when in this industry are doing or deploying here for ERP software, because the software is already developed, so it's not really a pure agile, and it might not always be pure waterfall, but you might have some degree of iteration and feedback loops and all those really good things. But you want to really understand the project methodology and what to expect in the implementation. And different customers have different experience and expectations with that, but it's a good idea to ask and have that conversation as well. Also want to cover a couple other things here. The other big part of an implementation is understanding change management, and that can be, hey, the employees, your business is going to be experiencing change. How are you managing that? This is, a big leap for some people. And that's an important element here. And how is that managed? What kind of training are we going to receive? How do we get up and running? What's the process for testing and going live on a new system? But again, know what is base camp and what you're going towards. So, hey, if this is successful, you know, we'll be able to increase our revenue over 2 times, our goal of increasing our revenue, doubling it or tripling it in the next 3 to 4 years. Or maybe, you want to improve your inventory turns or have visibility of your inventory in time to make quick decisions instead of, a month from now. Or you want to close your books in a week, not take a month to do it. Um, or you want to save on the cost of one employee, um, through automation, or the cost of having to hire someone new if you expand. I think that's good. I'll pause there if there's any questions, or we can just go on to the next slide here.
Move on to the next one here, Darren. Are you able to talk a bit about the difference between functional and non-functional requirements
Yeah,
and why they're
yeah.
both
I mean,
so important?
yeah, that's a really good point. And the thing is that this all comes down to, right, the requirements. That's, even when you get into starting a project, the first thing you're going to do is talk about your requirements, and maybe different, depending on the methodology that partner's using, they might create a FRD, functional requirements document, and maybe even a FDD, a functional design document, have you sign off on that, because everybody has to agree on what are the exact, hey, you've talked with the salesperson, here's our requirements, here's what we want to do, but now the implementers need to know, okay, exactly what are we going to set up and configure for you in the system, and how are we going to do that, and what's the exact, and do we need to make any changes, or is it out of the box, or et cetera? How are we going to configure and set this up for you? But it's important to start even at a high level, you know, discovery. What are our requirements? Now, there are two requirements can be broken down into two different um, areas. And of course, you see in the first bullet here, we have assessing your current system and processes. So, you know, what are we currently doing? What are our business processes? How do you, like an example of a process might be, what is our order to cash flow? So we get an order in, how do we fulfill that order? How do we invoice the customer, and how do we get paid for it, receive that cash, and close it out, and that becomes a transaction, gets entered in our books. What else do we need to track about that? Um, that would be an example of a process. Um, Defining your future goals and requirements are really important because, you know, I mentioned earlier in the last slide, hey, why are we doing this? And why now? You know, I could have changed software a year ago, 2 years ago, or maybe 5 years from now. Why are we doing this? And why is that important now? So it's really important to define that at some level. And of course, understand your requirements. Now, I mentioned there's two different types of requirements, your functional and non-functional. Simply put, or an example, of functional requirement is something that is functional, or that you want the software to do, or that you want to do. A non-functional requirement is still a type of a requirement, but it might be something to do with maybe the quality of how you do it. So, for example, um, let's say you go, okay, one of my requirements, we need order entry. Great. every every software out there has some kind of order entry built into it. So how do you want to perform that order entry? Oh, well, we need to, I need the lookups on our items to be automatic, or when I just type in a word, I need it to scroll over this. So I need to be fast. Well, what does fast mean? So those would be non-functional requirements. Maybe how your expectations, but there's still a requirement, because hey, my system took 10 hours to run this report, or that's and we need that report we need the same report, we need this data, but we need it in 1 hour, type of thing. Okay, let's if there's no questions, we can kind of head to the next slide here.
Of course. Next up, overall gap fit. Darren, what are some of the common gaps that businesses have?
Yeah, so this is really good. um, Before we even talk about what is a gap, um, so gap is, we're talking about what is that distance between, here's the existing software and your requirements. Does it meet all of those or not? Now, when you're talking about, and I don't know if this is on a later slide or not, but when you're talking about ERP software, in our case, let's say it's Business Central, or you might be looking at other similar packages out there in the mid-market, a lot of them fall under that. If it's not a very industry specific thing, like, hey, I've got software for the steel industry, or medical billing, or something real specific, a lot of the ERP software falls under this general ERP software category, which means it does 80% of what any business needs. And that's, all your accounting, general ledger, GL, AP, accounts payable, accounts receivable, banking, your maybe some reporting, your financial statements, maybe inventory tracking, etc. It's general purpose ERP software, 80% of what any business needs. We affectionately call it GLAPAR, GLAPAR, for just the basis of accounting. So the gaps are, what do we need to do in addition to what that software we're looking at does out of the box. So that's why it's important to understand your requirements and measure them against the software that you're looking at, and especially your unique requirements. What's unique to your business? It's really important to understand that. Or what do we do that's different? Or what can't we? Why are we changing software? What can't we do with our old system that we need the new one to do? Maybe it's um, audits, searches, lookup, compliance, speed, all of the above. Maybe there's, we need to track our projects and project profitability, and we can't really do that in our current system, or there's some disconnects or poor integrations or no ability to integrate or interface with some of our external systems. So it's important to understand and measure that. Now, how do you fulfill gaps once they're identified? Um, there's one is you can extend the functionality of the software. You could connect to other applications or software that perform that functionality, or you can change your business process to fit or match the software. It all depends. And there's also, you can perform customizations, personalizations in the system, setup configuration, that sort of thing, to again achieve what you need at the end of the day, or what you want to automate in your business or have the software reflect, record, report upon. Okay.
So if I go to the next one here, Darren.
Yep.
We have data migrations.
Yeah. So a big key element that I find when I'm first talking to someone is that they're usually not talking about this or asking about this, but I think it's very, very key. In addition to your requirements, most every business that's been in business for a year or more has data in their old system. So what are you going to do with that data? How do we migrate it forward, or what are our data needs? So, sometimes you may need all that access to all that data, sometimes not. Um, and it just depends on your business, different business policies, sensitivity of data. Maybe you're required to retain a certain amount of data, or maybe you need it for lookup, or maybe you need it for reference, or maybe you need it to build reports. Can be any one or all of the above. So one key thing to think about, unless you're performing an upgrade, in other words, upgrading old version of your software to the new version of the software, is probably the only instance where they'll bring forward all your data and all your history. For example, I want to migrate from Nav 2017 to Dynamics 365 Business Central. Well, it's a newer version of software. You can bring forth all your data. If not, what usually happens is we would migrate forward your master records. And what I mean by a master record is customers, items, vendors, your chart of accounts, beginning balances, open AR, open AP, but and maybe net change or summarized GL history going back a couple years, summarized by month. Now, you don't what you don't get, or is not very easily done, if at all, is bringing forward all your transactional historical detail. That would represent a mapping nightmare, in most systems. So usually the common strategies are, one, keep a copy of your old software running, maybe put it in a virtual environment or VM, so that you can look it up if that's all you really need. Two, you might not need it at all and just go, okay, we're good with beginning balances and totals and the master records, good to go. Or if you really need it, you might say, okay, we can put all that data into a data warehouse, such as an Azure data lake, and then have it available for query and lookup and reporting purposes. So there are a number of ways you can do it, but it's good to think about your data and your data needs. And again, when I was talking about risks and risk mitigation, this next bullet point is, that can be a big risk, is if your data is not clean, meaning there's been problems with the data, it's messy, etc., that can create some issues and take a lot longer in the data migration. But there's always an element when you're in a project, you've got your requirements and then you've got your data. So, data migration is always an element in software and something you should be considering when selecting software or a partner, and your implementation is what are we going to do with our data and how do we need to handle that existing data from our legacy system. Okay, next slide.
On
I
budget a
might
little bit
might have
earlier
to
on,
speed up.
but
I might have to speed up a little bit because I think we're running low on time, but budgetary alignment. So really important, in addition to ensuring you have alignment on the requirements, sometimes, you know, you could start showing off, hey, the software does all kinds of cool things, and you throw all your requirements and the kitchen sink at it, and then the budget increases. So it's really important, in addition, to have, hey, the software fits our business needs and requirements at all levels, from users all the way to the CEO and strategic alignment. Does the budget fit as well? So really important, do we have a $10,000 budget or $100,000 budget? I mean, typically, I don't know if there's any rules of thumb out there. You might say that, hey, 1% of our annual revenue should be dedicated toward IT projects and budget, but that's, just a very loose rule of thumb. But it's really important to understand, hey, what is this going to cost, and does that align, and does that fit kind of our budgetary needs? Are we a $10 million company, $100 million company, or something in between? And where is this going to sit? So you can generally ask about, hey, what is the rough order of magnitude? What are the ballpark estimates for these types of implementations? How long do they take? That's really important. You want to understand, I talked about requirements or your scope. I talked about data. The other big important thing here is licensing. So license costs, are they one time? Is it a subscription ongoing? If it's a one time, are there annual maintenance fees, etc.? So you have full, and also, along with that is the licensing. Is it in the cloud hosted? Are there hosting fees, or is that all included in the licensing subscription price you're giving me? And you have to understand your user composition. And by that, I mean, hey, who are the heavy users creating lots of interactions, really performing all the work in there, and who's just needs like light access or view read only type of access, or maybe they just make a couple entries, but they're not really hitting the system hard like a full on accountant would, or somebody performing heavy order entry or different things like that. But it's important because there are usually a distinction in a lot of the software between full users, light users. There might be different access by what the user's doing, by their functionality. It just depends. Um, and there might be, if you're talking about when we talked about gap fit and external software, maybe we pulled in an extension to round out the solution. Like, it's important to understand who will be using that. How many users, depending, if we're doing barcode scanning, or maybe it's a tax calculations or pay, whatever it is. It's good to understand your user composition and who does what in your company. Oh, they're just warehouse employees, so they just need to access the devices. They don't really need to get in the system, or they're just performing sales and order entry, etc. Again, all this adds up to, your requirements and the licensing, data migrations. That all is going to add up to a budget, right, or an implementation. So, again, you're going to have one-time implementation fees. What's this going to cost to get this thing up and running, or at least in a phase one? What are my ongoing licensing costs? I mentioned that. And then the other thing that a lot of times does not get asked or discussed, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, I would say, is ongoing support. So once we're live, hurrah, how are you going to support me? And is there stabilization period that you're still working with the delivery team right after you go live on this new system and cut over and you're off your old system? Kind of scary, right? It's a very critical time. So very typical to have a good month to run those processes that happen once a month, or reports and other things that may come up less frequently than your daily use of the system. And then after it's all live and stable, how do you get support? Is it a help desk? Do they have a ticketing system? Is it local? Is it overseas? What are their hours of availability? Is there a support contract? Can we support on demand? Can I just pick up the phone or enter a support ticket and get help? What's the mechanism by which you can do this? So this is all really important. All that plays into understanding the budget and determining if you have functional alignment and budgetary alignment with the software and the company who you're selecting to implement the software. Also, I should say that implementation will include training. Another good thing to ask about: how do you perform the training? Is it train the trainer? Can we record that? Etc. Okay, let's go on. I'll pause here if there's any questions.
There aren't any through right now,
Okay.
Darren, but again, if anybody does, just pop your questions into the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. But we have a couple slides left, so let's go on
Yep.
to partner selection and implementation.
Wonderful. And I should mention, when you're looking at partners, there's a lot of different things to understand. And when we're talking about implementation, we're also talking about approach. Um, you know, are you trying to, and this is something to think about, do we want to implement everything all at once, or do we want to take a critical path and implement the minimum viable product, or get just what we need, to get off the old software, get on the new stuff, and then go from there? The advantage of each is, so if you do this sort of big bang where, hey, we get all our requirements down and we implement it all, you're going to have everything you need when you go live. The disadvantage is it's going to take longer to implement and it's going to cost more. So before you see $1 of return on investment that we talked about in our earlier slide, it might take 8 months to get there. In the meantime, you're still using your old software and experiencing all the issues from the inefficiencies with that and technical debt and everything else, and all the other reasons why you're switching and getting onto new software. Maybe a lot of customers are telling me today that they prefer a phased approach where, hey, we just get up and running on what we need quickly so we can start to realize the benefits and return on investment quickly, even though we don't have everything we need. We've identified in our requirements, going back to our first slides, of, hey, what's nice to have, what's future, what can be in a future phase, and then what's critical. What do we have to have day one when we go live to operate our business? And a lot of customers like that today because it gets them, one, immediate return on investment, or more immediate, and they're using the software, and then they can start getting comfortable with it, and then they can start thinking about, hey, what do I want to be when I grow up, or what new things do I want to do, and then sort of feather those in, or have a phase 2 or phase 3 um, approach to that. So it's really good to think about these things in the implementation, what makes sense. Or sometimes the budget comes back, you said, hey, here are all my requirements, and the budget comes back and you're like, it's overwhelming, it's twice as much as I wanted. Well, the way to approach is go, okay, what do we have to have today, and what do we want? Maybe we have budget for it that we can get next year, over 3 years, etc., and keep expanding with the software. A good example of that might be, hey, we need better inventory control. We got to do all this stuff and manage it better, and our turns, all this, and then tomorrow it's like, okay, we want to automate that more in our warehouse and have barcode scanning. Well, that could be a good phase 2 once you have everything else in your warehouse mapped out and the zones and bins, everything else. Now you can get into some warehouse scanning. Would make a lot more sense than trying to do it all at once. Would represent maybe too much change and be a little overwhelming, for a company functionally, budget wise, and their bandwidth. And that's another thing to consider. When choosing a partner, I like to think about several things. in addition to that, what is their implementation methodology? But who are you working with? The people make all the difference. How's their communication? Are they friendly? That's important, right? These things, how do they manage these projects? Um, and what's the method by which they do that? How frequently am I getting feedback, and iterations or visibility into this, into my project? And am I going to see my budgets to actuals as I'm going along? Do they have subject matter experts, or people who can guide us through and provide best practices into our implementation? Again, I mentioned ongoing support and training. Um, Now, there's a couple different styles of implementation too. I should mention there's kind of your traditional implementation, which I mentioned, sort of your waterfall thing where you go, okay, the first step, after you purchase is we do all this analysis and analyze our requirements. There's might be some requirements elicitation, and then setting and then determining how the system's going to be set up. All this project preparation work, and then implementing, meaning we're going to set up and configure the system exactly as how we've discussed and analyzed, and we're going to do all these different things, and then we're going to train you on it. We're going to import your data. You're going to test the system and test all your business processes end to end, and ensure it's all good. Then we're going to pick a date, go live, and then stabilize the system, and then you're off to support. That's kind of represents a typical traditional implementation. Um, we also, and you might see this, a lot of partners out there have a sort of a quick start. Encore calls our quick start. We have a Business Central Accelerator program, whereas what we've done is we've taken out um, all the elements, and for a low fixed fee, you can actually perform a templated implementation where we just go down and without we just go down through checklists and set up the system. How do you want your chart of accounts? Import your data, master records. How do you want your AR set up? How do you want your AP? And we just set up and configure the system. The way we're able to do that for a low fixed fee is we removed all the overhead of analysis, project management, and anything else, and have said, okay, we're just going to get you off your, and this is usually great for like startups, or hey, I'm going off of a small accounting system like QuickBooks, or one of those other systems out there, and getting into the Business Central world, getting just up and running as quickly as possible, the fastest way. Maybe you have a timing consideration, you need to do this in a few months, not 6 to 8 months, or whatever, you need to get it done right away. These quick starts are great because we can often give you a fixed fee and say, yes, we're just going to do this, no customizations, no add-ons or extensions at this point. We're just going to set you up with all your basics. And then that gives you an opportunity, again, why a lot of customers like this, gives you an opportunity to get really comfortable with using the system, and then you can start performing these other projects and the you know what I want to be when I grow up, or another way to look at it is, here's base camp, and then climbing Everest, one step at a time. So a few different approaches there to implementation. Again, you have these big traditional implementations, you can phase those out. The quick starts are another form of phased implementation. So you just get the basics done now and quickly up and running, and then start adding in all the other things that you want to do. Um, I think I mentioned all the other things about partners. So I'll just pause there if there's any more questions. I don't know if we have one more slide here.
I have this might go. We can talk a bit more about partners with the next two here, Darren. So I have
Hmm.
about why
Yeah.
Microsoft and Encore.
So yeah, this is a cool slide. Um, we're talking about what's in the middle here, which is ERP, or Microsoft has their Dynamics 365 family of products, which covers the gamut of ERP. When I say ERP, I should define that: enterprise resource planning, or it's a class of software that goes a bit beyond just basic accounting, but can track all kinds of other aspects of your organization's operations. It might be include CRM or customer relationship management. It might include, you know, project management. It might include manufacturing in depth, etc. Anyhow, that's in the center. But what you get here with the Microsoft, and like I said, hey, general purpose ERP, 80% of what any business needs. They're all kind of comparable out there today, and technology is really advanced, and they all have GLAPAR, order entry. You can produce financial statements and various reports, enter your inventory, etc. How well they do it and the specifics of that, you know, is where there's little differentiators here and there within a certain range. Some may do it better than others. And that's why it's important when evaluating software to take a look, ask for a demo. I should have mentioned that somewhere in here, but that's often a deciding factor is, does this do what we need, and especially in those areas that are important to us. Because there's a lot now in these ERP softwares, but do they do what we need? I think where um, Microsoft products really stand out and really shine is their interoperability with the entire Microsoft stack. So I often am talking with companies that are already or want to become a Microsoft shop, meaning they want all their software aligned with Microsoft. Why? Because, hey, nobody's more Microsoft than Microsoft. If you hear that, it's probably not 100% true. But you're going to get this incredible interoperability here with Office. So most companies have Microsoft 365, which is what you used to call Office 365 in the cloud, which includes all your Word, Excel, SharePoint, PowerPoint, Teams, Outlook, etc. That's going to have all kinds of interoperability or functionality built in with your ERP, so you'll be able to work more efficiently using tools that you're already familiar with. So it's going to shorten that learning curve. This dynamic solution or any of the solutions will live in the same tenant as your Microsoft 365, and therefore you'll get single sign-on. You have to be jumping between all these different programs. I want to export something to Excel, make some changes because it's a big list of items, and then bring it back into the ERP software. Easily done. Um, all kinds of, I want to collaborate in teams with the software. Easily done. So you're going to have all kinds of power here, interoperability, collaboration, using tools you already know and are familiar with. The other thing here down below the middle, you've got Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI. That's, you know, really strong here. Because you have all this data. We talked about data and data migration. Well, how do I want to visualize and surface that data? Do I have workflows that I need to automate? Do I need to see it better with Power BI? Do I have a special little thing that I couldn't find anywhere? Can I quickly create a little app or Power App, low code, no code solution to get me what I need or what my business needs quickly? Over to the left here, this just sort of illustrates that Microsoft software is now, and Microsoft realized this a long time ago, we got to play nice in the sandbox, and there are a lot of different users, so it's sort of software, or I should say browser and device agnostic. So, hey, it's optimized if you download the version for your cell phone versus your iPad, or maybe you have a different type of tablet versus your PC, or maybe you've got three screens around you, like I've seen a lot of people. So, and it's going to work on a variety of different common browsers like Edge, Firefox, Chrome, etc. So it's giving you a lot more flexibility, and again, playing nicely in the sandbox with all the technology here. And then in addition, that Microsoft Cloud is a compelling message because it's sitting on the Azure platform, which is Microsoft's cloud platform, and it's giving you the SQL Server database. Microsoft's maintaining all of this in the background on a monthly basis and continuously updating it with the most current security and enhancements and features in the system. You're going to get Copilot, which is Microsoft's generative AI is built into the products, and then they release more and more of it. There's lots of really cool features with that you can see when you ask for a demo. Okay, do we have another slide? Final slide. I think we're at time here, so I want to
We are
be
at time.
respectful. So
The
just real
last slide
fast. So
here.
last slide, what sets Encore apart? I would say, the people who understand this Microsoft message, and we have practices that align with each of those areas that we just showed you on the prior slide, so that we don't just offer you one tool in the kit and try to make that and fit that into your business needs, but rather we find the right tool for the job and help you understand what the best practices are and the best deployment method for that. All right, that's the end of my presentation. I'm available to answer any questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Darren. And again, if anyone does have any questions, we won't be able to get to them during the presentation, but we will get back to you later today by email. So you can just enter those into the control panel. I am going to add the link to our events page to the chat if you'd like to check out previous webinars or register for upcoming webinar sessions. I'll also add the link where you can set your email preferences and opt into our emails so you can stay in the know about upcoming events and see our latest blog articles. Great, so thank you, Darren, for all the
Thank you.
information today, and I hope everyone has a good rest of your day.